Hello and welcome to the Dark Green Wake podcast. I'm Harry Ford.
I'm Brandon Mills.
And I'm Pause. It's better. Slightly more uplifting.
He's our mascot now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's going to become like the novelty thing, isn't it? It's just going to be like, I'm Harry Ford, I'm Brandon Mills, I'm Pause. Like, It's just going to be like, you don't even have a last name.
Name's Pause.
My name's P. Oz.
P to the Oz.
P to the O to the
Posy.
How do you spell it? Do you spell it with an S? All right, because
I used to do Z like Roz from Monsters Inc.
Well, you got it from I didn't get called Pause too much before college. And you got it from the back of my Man United.
Yeah, and that's why we call you it, because obviously you're Harry as well.
Yeah.
So we've got Harry and Harry, so it gets confusing.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
so, today we're talking a bit about some of our favourite directors. We've all got quite a few, some overlapping ones, and we're just gonna talk about what we like about.
We're all such good friends.
Exactly.
we all overlap.
We all get along. We're just gonna talk about favourite directors, what we like, the films we like, and let's have discussions. Pause. Who do you want to start with?
I'm going to start with my favourite director of all time, Quentin Tarantino.
Standard choice.
Quentin Tarantino made my favourite film of all time, which is Pulp Fiction, and there were two films that I know got me into film, and the first one was The Shawshank Redemption.
Right.
I saw that, and I'd never seen anything quite up to that standard. Pulp Fiction changed the way I looked at films, like, not in the sense that, not how good they could be, because I'd seen the full extent with The Shawshank Redemption, but it changed my ideas on the rules of, not rules, but the way you can make a film, because it was so much different to anything I'd ever seen, and it was so out there. And his other films as well, Reservoir Dogs, it's just not the usual, is it? Because it's a heist film without the heist.
Exactly, yeah.
Kill Bill's
that is amazing. Kill Bill's brilliant.
I love Kill Bill as well, the first one. I'm not huge on the second one.
Second one's a bit weird.
Yeah.
And a bit racist, let's be honest.
Just a little. The Inglourious Bastards, it's not his best film, but I do like it. I think it's an interesting turn on the war, really, isn't it? It's Jewish people hunting down Nazis.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. That's why I like him as well, because he's just so like different.
He's good at turning genres on their heads.
Yeah.
That's what Quentin Tarantino does for me.
Especially with the way that he did like Pulp Fiction, where it like starts with like near the end. It's like, well, it starts in the middle, doesn't it, and then it works its way through, and like the end is like quite early on. It's really weird, like the way that it's all kind of like
his most recent one as well, Django Unchained. I like that film.
I do like that film as well.
Too long.
A little bit too long. Yeah. I do like it. I love the scene with Leonardo DiCaprio at the dinner table. I thought that was just stunning.
Once it got to the Australians and Tarantino
that was a bit weird.
That's when I turned off a bit.
Mr. Quentin.
But I do agree. Like Pulp Fiction was the first film I saw and thought, I want to direct something. I want to do something as cool as that. It was the first film I ever saw that was cool, really. But I wanted to quote and wanted to kind of involve myself with, I suppose. But I suppose one criticism I would have of Tarantino, not necessarily his fault, but he did start it. There was a wave of films after sort of Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, which tried to do that style, and most were pretty bad.
Yeah.
But, I mean, stuff like Lock, Stock, Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch, good films that used that style, but there are a lot of films made at the time that were just rip-offs.
I've only just realised that Snatch is so practically Reservoir Dogs and
exactly
as well. It's kind of like those two.
Guy Ritchie was completely inspired by Tarantino. Yeah.
No, I'll think about it.
Yeah.
But I do like Tarantino. I feel like maybe as time's gone on, he's got a bit indulgent, and his films are a bit too overlong now, and his cameos are nearly always terrible. Yeah. He needs to stop being in his own films.
I like Jimmy in Pulp Fiction. It's just funny, I think.
I was just thinking then, it was when you mentioned it, like you saw a Tarantino film, and that's what made you want to like direct, and what made you want to make films. Like it just made me think like what made me want to make films. Yeah. And I'm just curious, was it the same for you? Like, did you watch like a film by a specific director, or like just watch any film and then decide that you wanted to?
Yeah, I think The Shawshank Redemption was, when I saw that for the first time, I'd never seen anything even close to that standard before. And it was, I don't know how old I was, like 13 maybe-ish. And I was mind blown by it. Like, it was just a stunning film. I consider it one of the best films ever made.
Absolutely.
It's really weird, though?
It's so good.
Like, because of that, like that's influenced you, because you do more script writing, don't you?
Yeah.
Harry, yeah. And like you do like more directing, like that kind of thing, on writing and directing. Like you two both do kind of the same thing. Like you mainly like to direct, or you mainly like to write your scripts. Whereas me, when like the whole reason that I want to like make films is because one day I was just in my nan's back garden shooting a slow motion video. I think I was like throwing a Molotov in my nan's back garden.
Throwing a Molotov.
A Molotov, yeah.
Wow, okay.
And Joe's replying. And then I was in between thing because I'd left sixth form and I was in between education, let's put it that way. And like I was looking for a job and I couldn't get a job or anything like that. And like I was thinking, I really enjoy making videos. Is there something that I can do that will help me get further in doing this? Because this is really embarrassing for me to say now, being like the editor. Like I would like shoot like in 420 or something. It was terrible. It was like a little box in the middle of a screen, and then like I'd use like Windows Media Windows Movie Maker, yeah, to like edit my videos. And it's terrible like to think about now that I use like Adobe Premiere and we're shooting like in full 1080p. And it's really weird. Yeah. But that's what inspired me to make them, and I'm more like inclined to be the actor and the cameraman, which is quite interesting.
See, my two films most inspired me. Pulp Fiction. Watched it and I kind of thought, I want to do something that cool. I want to do something that everyone will watch and sit up and think that was amazing. And then Dawn of the Dead, the original, sort of 1978. My dad had a VHS copy, and that's a film you need to see on VHS because it's just in like Blu-ray. It just loses what made it so great. And that's the kind of film that got me into like horror, and I started wanting to do that, and I started like making little shorts and stuff like that. And the very first film I ever made when I was about 12 was just Reservoir Dogs, basically, but filmed in like my house, with credits were like written on paper and held up to the camera. That's how low, but on like a big clunky 90s video camera. So Tarantino, yeah. Brandon, you obviously picked Tarantino as well.
Yeah, I picked Tarantino like because I like his weird like approach to things like Pulp Fiction, how it's like none of it's in order. I liked that. Like every film that I'd seen up until that point was like, besides Snatch, that I didn't really realise it was like, I just enjoyed Snatch. Yeah. I enjoyed it so much that I didn't notice it was out of like order. And like it was just like I watched it and like, because like I say, every film that I'd seen up until then was just like chronological. Like at the start point it had a middle and it had an end, and it just went through, and like they started to get predictable, like they still are to me now. Like it's like, oh well, he's the main character and this person's this, you know, like they're obviously going to die first, or something really bad's going to happen to them, or like if it's a love story, it's like, well, they're going to break up at like some point in the middle and it's going to go on a little bit of a hiatus, and it's like, will they get back together, won't they get back together, and then they get back together like at the end, and it's like a really nice reunion right at the end and everything. And I just love like Tarantino's approach to like, it's just like, right, so I'm going to start halfway through here. This is halfway through the film. I'm just going to start here. We'll kick it off here. Then I'll end it in the middle, and then we'll go back to the middle again, and then we'll just, you know, then we'll have the end at the beginning, and like it's just really weird, like the way that he like laid it all out, especially like just, I don't know, and then like Paul said, like with Inglourious Basterds, like it's just really like weird because it's a different take like on the war and everything. It's just pretty much everything Pos said, I'm just reiterating now, so I don't want to like repeat myself too much.
Alright, well I can talk about one of my favourites, director of my favourite film of all time, Trainspotting. Danny Boyle, I absolutely love the director. One thing I think is really underrated about Danny Boyle is generally, if you're a director, you either have your style and you're an auteur, like Tarantino or Scorsese or I don't know, Sergio Leone. They have their styles, and that's how people knew it was them. You know, David Lynch, you know you're watching a film by him. And Danny Boyle has managed to do a thing where he's covered just about every genre while still keeping a part of himself. Because I noticed this when I was watching Copland, the director, whose name I think is James Mangold, he's directed stuff like Walk the Line, the Johnny Cash film, and The Wolverine. So he's done all these different films, and no one really remembers him because he's just the guy who's made these films. Whereas Danny Boyle has sort of kept his personality and he's almost become an auteur even by doing so many different films. Because he started off with like the crime films like Shallow Grave, Trainspotting, and then he did like a sort of weird romantic comedy, Life Less Ordinary. And then since then he's done kind of the big Oscar-winning Slumdog Millionaire and 127 Hours. He did like horror film 28 Days Later. He did sci-fi Sunshine. He's done this like incredible variety, and I don't think it really gets picked up that much. But it's crazy to be able to have your own style and do anything with it, you know.
Yeah.
And even when he's kind of done misfires, like The Beach isn't an amazing film, and Trance I wasn't a big fan of at all. But I still think he's never really the problem with it. His directing's always great, you know. Camera work in Trainspotting, outstanding. The scene where Renton's like high on heroin, he like sinks into the floor, and it's all from his perspective. It's amazing. One of my favourite scenes ever from my favourite film. And yeah, I just love Danny Boyle's style. I think he does something really interesting with a huge amount of different material. I think he's incredible.
Yeah, I like Danny Boyle as well. I've not seen as many of his films as you have. I've seen Trainspotting, 28 Days Later, 127 Hours, Slumdog Millionaire. Obviously, I agree with you that
I've also
Trainspotting
seen those, just to put it out there.
I agree with you that Trainspotting is the best. It's an interesting film. I thought 28 Days Later, I think, for me, is the only even half decent zombie film ever made. So I credit him for being able to... Because I just
You're just not a fan of zombies.
I just don't.
I'm not a fan
I love
anymore.
zombies.
I used to be.
Because I'm like really into like the Resident Evil series, and I think that's mainly because I played a lot of the Resident
Yeah,
Evil
well,
games.
when I first got into horror, I loved zombies. I've got like every Dead film that George Romero did. But since stuff like The Walking Dead and like Dead Snow, I'm so bored of them now.
They kind of seem to ruin like the zombie
Yeah,
genre.
they've just taken away what I liked about it. So now I'm just not.
It's like the news. Like I don't know what number it's up to now. It's like Resident Evil like 7 is like in the film thing. Like 1, 2, and 3 are good. They're good movies. You get to like 4, 4's a bit, you know, and then 5 is just. I mean, they're not even zombies anymore. They're kind of like mutated monsters, which is kind of like what they did with the game, which is kind of why they're doing it with the films. Like the game kind of like had cool zombie like things in the beginning, and then it just kind of trailed off into like having these mutated monsters. But
I mean, if that's the only zombie film you think's alright, that's pretty impressive.
To be fair, I haven't seen
like a huge amount.
I've seen loads of the modern ones, but I haven't seen George A. Romero's.
Yeah, I mean. George A. Romero, they're kind of dated in like the effects. Like in Dawn of the Dead, they're all blue because the makeup went wrong, so it's all blue zombies. But like he just got what was scary and what was cool about horror films, like the soundtrack and score, and like the characters. He did great, like villains as well. Like Day of the Dead's really underrated. That's a great film.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but yeah, Danny Boyle to be able to do something you liked with a genre you don't like at all is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I quite liked Slumdog Millionaire. Because it was like we had like when we went on holidays, like me and my mum and my stepdad, we had like this Arcos where we like had all his films on and everything. So like on the plane, we could watch movies on the plane and stuff like that. But it's like one time, like because for some reason like we always like go out and we'll like go in the sun, I'll go in the pool or whatever. Then we'll come back in like then like my mum and like my stepdad will go to sleep for a bit, and then I've kind of got nothing to do. So when we had this Arcos, like I had something to do because I could watch films and everything. And like at this point, I'd never really watched that many films before, like, and even if I did, I didn't really watch them properly. I didn't understand them. But Slumdog Millionaire was like a film that I watched quite a few times because I was trying to understand the like what was like going on. I couldn't quite understand like what was happening in it, so I watched it over and over, trying to like grasp it. And that's kind of like the first film that I ever really watched that like got me into like films really. And that's kind of why I like it. I think it's a really amazing movie as well. Like the story and everything in it is.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people were sort of a bit downbeat on Slumdog Millionaire after it won the Oscar and said it was like cheesy or it was kind of over dramatic. But I think it's
kind
great.
of cheesy.
But it's really dark as well. You know the scene with the orphans where like he gets blinded.
Yeah.
And it's really dark and nasty, and you know to get that into like a huge sort of fairy tale Oscar film, I think it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
So both you again picked Scorsese as best director. Pretty fair choice, Martin Scorsese. Pretty respected.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of Scorsese films. There's only like 3 or 4 I think now that I still need to see. I've seen the big ones.
Jump in really quickly first because I've not got as much to say about Scorsese, and you're just gonna like blow like my whole thing away. Like my whole like the only reason that I really like Scorsese is because he portrays gangsters and like stuff like that really well, and like it's just that kind of thing that I really like. And I don't know. It's just I'm kind of obsessed with like the mafia and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is like why I like The Godfather and films like that. Like I do like obviously they're not Scorsese, but I do like them, and like I'm obsessed with like that kind of like genre, and he portrays them like quite well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much all I've got. That's why I wanted to go first, because like now you can make it sound good.
Oh, okay. You might be flattering me slightly, but I'll try. Yeah, Scorsese has directed quite a few of my absolute favourite films. Goodfellas, Raging Bull, I think is just a sensational film. I think that of what I have seen, there's still a few I haven't seen, but I think that's Robert De Niro's best performance out of things that I've seen.
Fair choice.
Taxi Driver, The Departed. Although I think it could have been better. The Wolf of Wall Street, I think, as well. Scorsese, he's become this sort of, the word I'm thinking, master of cinema, sort of. He's
I know what you mean.
He just gets cinema. He's so, I don't know. It's like he knows so much about the idea of filmmaking and what it is.
He's an expert.
What film means. Yeah, I really respect like his ideas on what film should be and why it's important, and that it's something that more people should preserve, sort of like the idea of proper filmmaking, not just crap blockbusters and stuff like that. Some of his films, like Goodfellas, Casino, and The Wolf of Wall Street, they're all similar films, and I actually wrote a film that was strongly influenced by those. It's up on our YouTube channel, Way Across the Line. I did the whole voiceover thing and the 3 main characters and stuff like that.
And a soundtrack done by a genius of composing. Me.
I think that the award that I got for the soundtrack will just...
I agree. Scorsese's great. I don't think I'm like the biggest fan in the world, just because he doesn't always make the sort of films I'm hugely into. But Goodfellas, perfect film. Taxi Driver, great film. King of Comedy is probably my favourite. It's like the forgotten one, because he made it between, he'd done like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull, and he still had like Goodfellas to come. So most people forget that, but Robert De Niro in that film is just amazing. He's not like a hard man. He's not been a gangster. He's not been like wisecracking badass. Yeah. He's playing essentially a loser. It's kind of like, it's almost like the anti-Travis Bickle in a way from Taxi Driver. And it's such a great film, and it's very difficult to describe why it's so good, but I absolutely love that film. I think that's my favourite thing Scorsese's done. And as you say, The Wolf of Wall Street, it is good. I think it's too long by about an hour. You could cut out most of the kind of boobs and boobs and cocaine.
That with Margot Robbie?
Well, depends. That was in the first 2 hours. But if you just like cut out all the kind of boobs and cocaine from that film, you could probably get it down to about 10 minutes.
I knew you were going to say something like that.
Because that's what film is. But it is a good film, and Martin Scorsese is great, and he's tried to keep it varied a lot. Like Hugo, very different film to what he's done.
Yeah.
So
liked Hugo,
fair choice, Scorsese. One person we're all quite a big fan of is Edgar Wright, and I love Edgar Wright. Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, World's End. I think is just about a perfect trilogy.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with them. They are just genuine. They're just
great films.
Yeah. They're hilarious.
I don't think there's a better. I don't think I've seen many better written comedies than Hot Fuzz. There's so many jokes like layered on top of each other. It takes about. I think I've watched it about 5 times, and there's still new bits I'm noticing.
Yeah. I've been doing that with Hot Fuzz.
Yeah,
I've seen it about 4 or 5 times as well. Yeah, you always realise something new. It always makes you laugh at something new every time because it's.
I mean, the thing with Edgar Wright, like Tarantino, he's such a huge film fan, and you can see because he just references and he takes bits from him. All his style is kind of a mashup of like about 10 different directors, but he does something new with it. And like Shaun of the Dead, great film. Hot Fuzz, like not only good comedy, great action as well. He knows how to film action and show everything.
It's surprisingly good from a director that you wouldn't. Well, you just never would have guessed.
He came from like TV comedy, exactly. Like he did Space stuff. World's End, I think, is actually a bit underrated. A lot of people. I didn't love it first time, but on repeat viewings, like all their films, it gets better and better. And then Scott Pilgrim as well. A lot of people hate Scott Pilgrim.
I have to admit, I'm one of those people.
I love Scott Pilgrim.
I love Scott Pilgrim because I think it's one of the best directed action films ever. Like the action is so over the top, and and it appeals to me directly. The music, the kind of films referenced, everything about it. It's like the perfect film made for me, and there are only like a couple of films like that. That and Frank from last year, which also felt completely aimed at me. So Edgar Wright, knows how to direct comedy visually. Writes great scripts, him and Simon Pegg, and he gets action. And like when you live in a world like Michael Bay and people like that who just have like explosion stuff, to get someone who really knows how to do physical action.
Isn't that all Michael Bay films? Isn't it just an explosion and then there's a bit of action fitted around the explosion?
It's an explosion of shit.
Oh!
Shots fired, Mr. Bay. If you want to get back to us on it.
We still need to get a soundboard. We really need a soundboard.
So, just a few more. Stanley Kubrick. often considered sort of a director's director. You know, very technical, precise. You picked him, Pos.
Kubrick. I'm not American. Kubrick for me is easily, undeniably one of the greatest ever. 2001: A Space Odyssey is impossibly clever. Like, there's so much more to it than the actual story. There's like all the stuff with the space race and his anti-war protests, all hidden within the film, and what the monolith represents and what the evolution represents. It's such a clever film. And it's visually stunning. I think the first half an hour of that film, there's no speech, is there? Not even.
No, there's like the scene with the monkeys. And
the only like noise you hear in that is the monkeys screeching at each other, and it's the most. It's some of the best cinema I've ever seen. That first
the opening scene, excellent.
It's so good.
It's phenomenal.
I quite like some of his older films as well. Actually, Dr. Strangelove was one that I didn't really know much about going into, but was quite. I didn't even realise that it was a comedy.
Yeah.
And I was quite caught off guard by it, and it's funny. It's but it's quite a captivating. Is that the right word? It gets you. It really involves you in the story as well. It's all about nuclear war, and that interested me a lot, and it was very well done. Obviously, he's a controversial director though as well, like Clockwork Orange.
Clockwork Orange banned for years. He removed it.
Didn't he have it banned?
Yeah, there was lots of like violence afterwards that was blamed on it, and he kind of had it removed till about, I think it was after he died they finally kind of got it back. But yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen Room 237, documentary about Shining, where basically obsessives talk about what they think it represents, and it really does show just how much of a genius he was, that his film can be interpreted in like 12 different ways in such detail. You know, is it about like the faked moon landings? Yeah. Is it like about racism against Native Americans? And they're all believable because he was
just like that, and he loved that sort
every
of stuff.
Shot in that film is there for a reason, you know. And
I think that's the thing I love most about Stanley Kubrick. There's more to what you are watching.
Exactly.
It's not about it's about the story and the plot, but it's about his beliefs as well. Just cleverly little place things most people don't pick up on, and if you notice them, you just it makes you feel like you're some kind of film expert when you pick up on these things that he's done, and it is one of my favourites, unquestionably.
Brandon, you touched on it earlier when you mentioned Godfather. Francis Ford Coppola.
Yeah, I've only seen the Godfather series from him. I've not seen much else. But once again, it's literally just because I'm obsessed with like that the gangsters and like the way that like the mafia is and everything like that. Like, I don't like from that, like one of my favourite games is Mafia 2, and Mafia 2 is basically Godfather. It's very, very similar at least, and it's like that's why I like it, because it's kind of like I can play the Godfather without actually playing the Godfather game, because the Godfather game is terrible. Like, there's a game for it and it's terrible, but like Mafia is just like Mafia 2 is just so stunning. It's like I can play the game, like I can play the movie, and it's amazing. But like I keep saying it. I don't know why, but I'm obsessed with like that era. For some reason, but like anything like that, like the Yakuza, like, because I think there's a film about like the Yakuza, I can't remember what it's called, but I love that film as well. Like, just anything that's kind of like to do with organised crime, like with the mafia and anything like that, like that will just grab me. Like you were saying, like what film were it that you were saying that was like made for you? I forgot.
Scott Pilgrim.
Yeah. Scott Pilgrim, that's it. I knew it. It was there on the tip of my tongue. But it feels like that. I just like any like mafia or any like organised crime film is just like for me. It feels like they're made just for me, because I'll just sit there and I'll drool over them because they're just amazing. I don't know. I'm just obsessed with that. I've got no idea why.
No, that's fair. I mean, Francis Ford Coppola, pretty well respected as one of the best directors ever. Yeah. You know, Apocalypse Now, amazing film, you know, and he did quite a lot, and then sort of disappeared. Quite a few of his films flopped, and now he doesn't do a lot. It's a shame, really, but that is the way it goes with quite a lot of directors.
Appreciate the work he has done. I love the first two Godfathers in particular. Yeah. I think the first Godfather. This is my opinion. I think it's probably the best film that's ever been made.
That's a fairly respected opinion, I think.
Yeah, it's a perfect film. There's nothing you could ever change that would make that film better, and it shows how good he really can be. And The Godfather Part 2, the fact that that's almost, if not as good shows that it's not just a fluke. He is actually that good, or was actually that good. He's been away for a while now. Apocalypse Now as well, like you said, is a great film, and it's quite a clever psychological film. It really looks into the mindsets.
Yeah, the effects of all.
Players,
the opening scene of that, set to the end by the doors where the trees burn. Yeah, I love that scene. My favourite shots, just the trees going up in flames. Amazing. My final one I talk about, I literally just decided this on the fly because we mentioned Frank. Frank was my favourite film of last year, and Lenny Abramson is the guy who directed it. He hasn't done that much, but the films I've watched, I really, really love his work. He did, obviously, Frank, that's going to be his most famous sort of cult film, and I think in years to come it will become quite a big cult film. I reckon because a lot of people did like it, but it wasn't seen by...
I certainly liked Frank,
but before that he did a film called What Richard Did, which is a really interesting drama about this sort of jealous, love-struck teenager, and he ends up getting in a fight with this other kid and accidentally kills him, and it's all about the kind of psychological effect of that. And that's one of the best films in terms of portraying teenagers, where they're not just really irritating or shallow or vapid. They're actually real people, and that was just beautifully directed. Came out of nowhere, didn't expect it. It was a great film. And his first film was called Adam and Paul, and this was basically the film that inspired me to write a script similar, because it's about sort of two drug addicts and kind of their life, and it's a really bizarre style. It's kind of slapstick, but in a realistic way, which sounds bizarre. It's a very dark film. It's got some really great performances from people I don't know if they've been in any other films, but again, just great film, low budget as well. Probably about 500,000, something like that. Nothing at all. But yeah, he's just consistent, and that's what I like. He's just made 3 films that I really, really enjoy, and hopefully he's going to keep making more. And if it's as good as Frank, then I'll definitely watch, because I absolutely loved Frank.
I'm definitely going to go see more of his work now that I've seen Frank.
Yeah, definitely. What Richard Did, great film. So
is it time for the quote now? Is that what we're doing?
Have you got a quote?
I found a brilliant one.
Okay, let's go for it.
I was just flicking through and I found a good one, but then I continued flicking through and it's all right. And I found one that's just I mean nothing to you or either of you two, because you don't I'm not going to say it because I want to save it until I've read the quote. But the quote is, "Green sleeves was all my joy. Green sleeves was my delight," and that's from Anonymous. But the reason I picked that is because I thought it was really funny, because I like Sons of Anarchy. I'm wearing the t-shirt today. But I love Sons of Anarchy, and in season 7 there is a character called Greensleeves, and he is a pimp. And and
a relevant quote.
I'm reading this if you just envision Greensleeves as being the pimp. If I read Greensleeves was all my joy, Greensleeves was my delight, that has a completely different meaning, and I when I read that, that's the first thing that I thought. So I just thought that was quite interesting.
I remember years ago I tried to write a pimp character in a script. He had the best name I've ever come up with. I think his last name was Styles. I remember that. I remember thinking a pimp called Styles. Also.
Was it Harry Styles?
Oh dear.
It was. Oh! It was the One Direction prequel. No Direction.
We really
it's
do
when
need
just
to figure
jobless.
out where we can get a soundboard or something that we could just input our own sounds into.
What, so you can just go, hey-o.
Yeah, just so that I can
I'll be the human soundboard. What sounds do you want?
I don't know.
I'll record some and you can decide your favourites.
Do you want to do the outro? Do you want to make a nice musical outro?
Not really.
No. Tough, you've already said you'll do it now.
I don't know how many songs at work is an outro, really.
That's the name. That name again, it's Dark Green Lake.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We don't care about copyright laws. We'll do whatever the hell we want. If we want to rip off The Simpsons theme...
Let me out, Jimmy.
We'll just do the countdown theme at the end.
Yeah.
Do. The end. No, we won't really do that because that would be shit.
Okay.
Right. And on that beautiful note, we'll wrap up another edition of the Dark Green...
your ears in
of the Dark Green Wake podcast. I've been Harry Ford.
I've been Brandon Milnes, reading from the Acid Green Notebook. I'm going to continue doing that until someone shoots me.
You do that. I've been Pause.
And
Just Pause.
This has been the Dark Green Wake podcast. Cheers for listening. See ya.
Bye.